All right. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Today, I'm going to be talking about ways to create conversations around OER on your campus. So, I wanted to just start off by sharing a little bit about myself so you have a little bit of understand kind of my perspective and where I'm coming from as I'm going through this presentation. So, my name is Shayna Pikela. I am currently the Scholarly Communication Librarian at Gonzaga University. I've only been there since 2019, so I'm still pretty new and still kind of adjusting to the culture and getting a sense of the community there. But in my current job and in previous positions, a lot of my responsibilities have been focused around supporting open access publishing. So currently, I manage Gonzaga's open access journal publishing program, which is fairly new. It's called Gonzaga Library Publishing. I'm also a liaison librarian to 4 different academic departments, and I provide traditional information literacy instruction and research support. So OER is mentioned in my job description. However, because Gonzaga doesn't have any kind of any OER initiative or program currently. So I say all of this because I just, I'm still learning a lot about OER, and I consider myself to be somewhat of an advanced beginner. But I'm excited to be here and to share what I have learned so far in the past year with all of you. So just wanted to start by giving a little bit of roadmap for this session. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about why conversations around OER and how can they serve you in an effective way. And then I'm going to talk through a framework that we've come up with at Gonzaga for anytime we're planning one of these conversations around OER. And then I'll talk a little bit about the context at Gonzaga related to work around OER, so you have a better understanding of when I move into the next section and talk through 3 specific examples of conversations that we held this past academic year. And I hope those examples will serve to inspire additional conversations at your own institutions. And then hopefully we will have some time for Q&A. So why conversations? Well, conversations are a great starting point if the concept of OER is new to your campus and you're kind of, you're looking to get your feet wet, but you don't really know where to start. They're a great way to raise awareness around OER, of course, and share information across different folks around campus. It's a really great way to informally assess attitudes and perceptions around OER without having to conduct any kind of formal survey. And of course, conversations bring together stakeholders from different groups, different campus units and departments. And hopefully that allows you to find your allies in this space, those folks who are particularly interested in furthering the mission behind open education. And then hopefully that leads into as well identifying opportunities for collaboration in the OER space. But overall, conversations are just a really great way to create momentum if, as I mentioned, the concept of OER is relatively new on your campus. So I mentioned I talked through a little bit of a framework. So these are some considerations that we take into account when we're trying to plan these types of conversations on campus. And when I get to specific examples, I'm going to provide examples of each of these considerations. So that'll kind of help you see how they work in practice. So the first thing to consider, of course, is your context, and specifically at your institution. What are the opportunities and threats around OER? And then, of course, you want to think through what are your goals for this conversation? I just talked through a lot of ways that conversations can be beneficial, and maybe every single conversation isn't going to benefit in all of those ways, but which one of those areas do you want to focus on in the particular conversation that you're envisioning? And then, of course, we want to think about our stakeholders. There are a lot of stakeholders in the OER realm. So which of those should be at your table for the particular conversation that you are planning at the moment? And who do you know on campus who can help bring those people to the table? Because a lot of the times we don't have relationships with everyone across campus, but leveraging existing relationships is a really great way to ensure that folks are included. And then finally, I urge you to think through what kind of structure is going to be most beneficial for this particular conversation. And if there are existing structures for conversations on your campus, like some kind of speaker series, workshop series, can you build on those? Can you be included in those? And if not, which is often the case, what shape of the conversation, what would the conversation structure look like that's going to directly appeal to the particular stakeholders that you want at the table? So, you're not going to approach a conversation with a group of students the same way that you would with a group of university administrators. Probably not. Those two groups of people, have different schedule restraints. And so it's just some things you want to think about. So I want to share a little bit about Gonzaga before moving into the specific conversation examples. So Gonzaga is a private Jesuit university, and we're located in Spokane, Washington, which is in eastern Washington, very close to the Idaho border. We're a mission-driven university. We're very focused on social justice. We have around 5,000 undergraduate students and around 2,000 grad students, so we're pretty small. Gonzaga does not currently, as I mentioned earlier, have any kind of OER incentive program or any type of campus initiative. However, we do in the library have an open scholarship committee, which was formed a little bit over a year ago, getting close to 2 years. And when I arrived at Gonzaga, I became part of this committee. I'm now the chair. But providing leadership and oversight for OER was part of our charge, or at least leadership within the library. And, in addition to some of the other areas that our group is charged with, we felt that OER aligned particularly well with the mission of Gonzaga. And so we decided we might focus on this area in a lot of the work we did last year. And we were interested in learning more about what the interest level was and current engagement was with OER in units outside the library. And we also wanted to be able to position the library as a resource and a partner in any OER activities. So the first conversation that we organized was what we called the OER Lunch and Learn. So I mentioned we were really interested, our committee was really interested in figuring out who else at Gonzaga was using OER and kind of what the general, just generally take the temperature of what around OER on our campus. So we were primarily interested in talking with faculty, as they are the folks who are directly making decisions about what textbooks to use. But we did acknowledge there are many other stakeholders on our campus, and we did want to include them in the conversation if possible. And when we were thinking about the structure, we have our Center for Teaching and Advising has this existing Lunch and Learn series, which is where faculty come together once a month, they bring their lunch, and they learn about a topic together that's somehow related to teaching and advising. It's usually pretty informal. Sometimes they invite outside speakers. So we thought this might mesh well with our goals and the stakeholders we were trying to reach. So, we approached the director of the CTA about hosting a lunch and learn that was specifically about OER, and he was very enthusiastic about this. And we were made aware of 2 faculty members who had already used OER in their courses. And so we asked if they would be willing to kind of kick off this lunch and learn by sharing their experiences using it and providing a little bit of a demo. So we invited all faculty at Gonzaga to this conversation, and we invited all of the staff at our university as well via a newsletter. And the library's role in this was, providing a lot of the coordination. We held the event in the library. We provided some snacks, and we provided a handout for folks to take away with some specific resources about OER. So We were able to learn from this event. We had a really great turnout, and we learned a lot about the different interest levels, experience, and attitudes at Gonzaga specifically. And we were thrilled to see that there was such a high level of interest, not only among faculty, but we had someone show up from the bookstore. We had a lot of library staff show up. I believe there was at least one administrator there. So that was really great to see. We did learn that not many faculty were using OER, but there was a lot of desire communicated to get more support in this area and have more channels for sharing information about OER. So the second conversation we hosted kind of led from the first one, and we called this an open conversation on open education. And this one started a little bit differently than the Lunch and Learn because it came about by way of one of the faculty presenters from the Lunch and Learn who approached us after that event and said he really wanted to have another faculty meetup about OER and specifically about tools that could be used for adapting and creating OER. So we were, of course, thrilled when he approached us because that doesn't always happen. And so we had a further, more in-depth conversation with him to kind of think through some of these considerations and ways we could bring together faculty again, but in perhaps a more structured way, and really focus more on kind of taking action around OER. So this event was primarily focused on faculty, and we were thinking about, in terms of the structure, piggybacking on our Center for Teaching and Advising's learning communities, which already existed. And these are focused groups of faculty who meet together over the course of the year or a semester about a singular topic and hold each other accountable for doing work in this space. So we thought, that sounds like a good fit for this one. However, we didn't want to just set up a learning community on our own. We were really interested in bringing together faculty who wanted to participate in a learning community or some type of similar group and allow the faculty to set their own direction for this group. And so that's why we framed this next event as an open conversation on open education. And so we invited all the faculty at Gonzaga again, and we did actually open it up to all staff because we thought, it would not hurt to have other stakeholders participate in this if they wanted to. And we did have an RSVP with a really short survey that asked faculty about what their interest and experience was related to OER. So we kind of had that going in. And this event was originally scheduled for March 2020. So we, because of the pandemic, had to move it online to Zoom. And unfortunately, it was also scheduled during the 2-week transition period that faculty had to move all of their courses online at Gonzaga. So that greatly reduced the number of attendees that we had for this one. However, we had about 8 faculty show up. So we were pretty impressed that that many actually came. And what we learned, from this particular conversation is that, faculty really want to have some kind of space where they can get ongoing support from their peers and particularly have dedicated time and be able to get hands-on practice with OER. And particularly a lot of the faculty that attended were interested in potentially having the learning community focus on specific tools. So some of the tools that came up were Hypothesis and Pressbooks. So potentially that might be a direction we take it in the future. And then the third conversation that we had at Gonzaga this last year was really focused on students. So the last 2 obviously were centered on faculty, and this one was about students. So our goals for this conversation, we were really interested in talking to students and kind of seeing what their level of awareness of OER was and raising that, and helping students be able to advocate for faculty to adopt OER. So we were aware of the Textbook Broke social media campaign that was started several years ago to highlight the high cost of textbooks. And we thought we might see if we could play with that. And at the time we were planning this event, Open Education Week was also approaching. So we thought kind of had that in the back of our minds as well. So what we decided to do was use the Textbook Broke social media campaign as a model and kind of put our own spin on it. And so we did this by implementing what we called a pop-up stand, which was run by library student employees. So we trained a handful of library student employees on OER, what it is, why they should care, what their faculty can do about it. And we set up a portable station in the library that had some information, some signage about OER, and we would have these library student employees go out into the library, set up the station, and ask students who are passing by about how much they spent on textbooks this last semester as a way to introduce the conversation about OER. And then we had those students who came up and participated, fill out a little fill in the blank with, this semester I spent X amount of money on textbooks. With that money, I could have done this instead, and take a little picture. We would, when students were able to, the student workers who were doing this on our behalf could kind of set their own schedule. This is why we called it a pop-up stand. It was sort of a way to make this easier for us. We didn't have to plan when they would go, be going out to the library doing this. So we would basically just have them go out whenever they felt like it. And then we would tweet that the stand was open and students could come find us and stop by. And they were incentivized to come find us because any of the students who participated could enter into a raffle to win a $50 gift card to our campus bookstore. So this is, the fill in the blank and a picture of what the sandwich board that we would set out. I know these photos are really small, but if you go to our Twitter account at Gonzaga Publish, we have quite a few more pictures there if you scroll back to March 2020. And then at the end of all this, we compiled, let's see if I can play this, compiled all the student photos into a slideshow, which we then distributed to all faculty and staff on the very first day of Open Education Week. And then for the remaining days of Open Education Week, we highlighted a specific OER resource where faculty could look for OER for their course. So I'm not gonna play all this, but you're welcome to go watch the rest of the video. So from this event, or conversation really, we did learn that students weren't particularly aware of OER, but we were sort of expecting that. But one of our biggest takeaways was that students talking to students is really effective. We had a lot of students participate. It was really hard to create the slideshow because we had so many photos to choose from. Unfortunately, the video wasn't viewed by very many faculty, but that could, we probably could have chosen a better path to distribute it. But at least we have the video that we can use again in the future, and potentially even as I could see at the beginning of a new conversation, you could play the video and kind of have faculty react to it. So I wanted to sort of end the presentation by coming back to this framework and say that I hope this helps kind of organize your thoughts around planning a conversation at your own institution, and hopefully the examples that I shared will kind of help inspire you. And I did want to acknowledge the folks who made these events possible this last year, our Open Scholarship Committee members, Brenda, Michelle, Sydney, and Renee, and our 2 faculty members who made the first 2 events possible, David Boos and Jeff Dodd. So that is all I have. I know that was kind of a lot in a short amount of time. I'm happy to take questions. And you can also feel free to send me an email, and I will make the slides available on the conference website. I'll upload them after we're finished here so that they'll be available to you.
I see some questions showing up in the chat.
All right, let me take a look. The link for the YouTube video is embedded in the slides, and I will make the slides available on the conference website if that works. The question about have I ever had a faculty member respond in anger when broaching the subject of OER? We have not personally had that experience at Gonzaga yet. I think a lot of our faculty are very, because we're such a mission-driven institution, it's so easy to tie OER back to the mission and talk about it that way. And I think that's really powerful and kind of can be a way to respond if any faculty were to kind of have that attitude. What are our next steps to continue the conversations? So for conversations with faculty, so we were, hoping to create this learning community, but with, everything with COVID, a lot of that momentum kind of was lost. However, we did just get a new director for our Center for Teaching and Advising, who I'm excited to work with and hopefully be able to put that, make that a reality, that learning community. Have you done more online conversations with faculty? We have not yet. That's something we're thinking about. We're in the process of setting our goals for the Open Scholarship Committee, and I'm sure something related to conversations with faculty will be on that. How did you find faculty OER champions and folks who have a positive outlook on OER? I did a faculty panel on OER and had a hard time finding anyone at my university who had used OER. The bookstore referred me to 3 faculty, and it turns out they were kind of meh. So I mentioned at the beginning, thinking about, your stakeholders and who do you know, what relationships do you already have with folks on campus who can help you make those kinds of connections? And that's how we found out about the faculty who were using OER. It was just it may have come through our Center for Teaching and Advising, but also, we have an instruction design and delivery department. And so I think kind of aligning with those, if your institution has comparable groups of people, making those folks aware that to keep their eye out for faculty who are doing things, and then just talking to other faculty. One of the faculty members who was, knew of another faculty member who was using OER. So I think just having a lot of chats with a lot of different groups of people to kind of dig up those folks. And then also having some kind of open meeting where you're inviting just a lot of people into one room at one time. You'll learn who's out there. And then also with the survey that we sent out as part of our invitation to the faculty learning community start planning meeting, essentially. That was one way that we were able to kind of figure out, because we asked, what's your interest and experience with OER? Do you also do one-on-one OER outreach with faculty? Not yet, but I would like to. Did I miss any questions? Oh, have you tried holding a virtual version of the OER pop-up stand? I meant to say this as I was going through and I forgot, so thank you for asking. Um, we have not, but I think it would, you could make it work virtually, particularly if you had students, submit their own photos. You could give them a background, like something like this that they could fill in. Um, yeah, I definitely think it could work in that space.
Thank you so much, Shayna. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and the session is ended, but you guys are welcome to stay online for another 15 minutes for informal chat.